Okay, I wanted to just deal with Israel-Palestine now and just look at this whole question of war aims because there is a debate, and it's a legitimate debate, about what are the war aims of Netanyahu and are they achievable? So Netanyahu started off by saying that the war aims of Israel when it came to Gaza, I think it's right, with one, freeing the hostages, two, destroying, annihilating Hamas. Well, if you start bombing, if you start sending in tanks, if you start sending in troops, if you start bombarding cities and urban centres with artillery and missiles and 2,000-pound bombs, my guess is you will kill hostages. You will not rescue hostages. So, in my estimate, this is what you call a cover. I don't believe it when Netanyahu says he wants to rescue the hostages. They have rescued some. They also shot them, and I'm sure they've killed them under rubble as well. But if you want hostages back, you negotiate. Netanyahu hasn't put forward anything that's negotiable. And it has to be said, at least in my estimate, you look at the Biden plan, however many countries have signed up to it, there's no way that the Israeli government was actually going to go along with that plan, because that plan wasn't meant to be implemented in Israel. This was about domestic politics. It's about the forthcoming presidential election in the United States and Arab American and Arab and Palestinian American voters. Anyway, so I just don't believe that. So in other words, what a discovery. Netanyahu is a liar. He says one thing and means another. So what about the other aim, annihilating Hamas? Well, I'll quote you. And again, take it whatever you want, but it matters in Israeli terms because here you are in an interview with the media, the spokesperson for the IDF, so not just some bod out of the blue, some ex-general or something like that, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari. It doesn't matter whether he's in the Navy, Air Force, it's the point that he was acting as the spokesperson for all Israel's armed forces, said this: Hamas is a political party, and quote, it's an idea rooted in the hearts of the people. And anyone who says that we can eliminate Hamas is wrong. Of course, Netanyahu has protested about this statement, but it's clearly true. Because, of course, Hamas isn't confined. Even if you kill everybody in Gaza, that doesn't mean you've killed Hamas. Hamas also exists and has been recruiting, and understandably recruiting after October the 7th. It's been recruiting on the West Bank. And if it wasn't recruiting in Gaza and Israel expelled the Gazan population to the Sinai, it would be recruiting and organizing people in the Sinai. Egyptian authorities might attempt to clamp down on it, but no, you're not going to defeat it. And that's the point that our Rear Admiral was saying. So is Netanyahu stupid? Does he not realize? In my view, of course he realizes that you cannot destroy Hamas simply by shooting fighters, or for that matter, killing tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians. Quite the opposite, in my estimate. It's like looking at World War II. You did have at the beginning, in the 20s, just after World War One, the idea that mass bombing would get the civilian population clamoring for surrender. You can look at H.G. Wells, for example, The Shape of Things to Come, as a novel. That's an example of it. But the military planners thought that that was going to happen. Well, anyone who thought it was going to happen, just talk to the people that were on the receiving end in London of the Blitz. They weren't clamoring for surrender. And talk to people in Berlin or Dresden or a German city that suffered from terror bombing. That's what they called it, from the US Air Force and the RAF. No, they hated the people that were bombing them. That is the tendency. So people don't clamour for surrender under those circumstances. They clamour for revenge against the people that are killing them. Either way, I think Netanyahu knows that. So why is Netanyahu pursuing this war? Okay, he sort of said that we're winding it down a bit, but we're not stopping the war. That's what he says. Well, I'll give you two immediate reasons. One is that he faces corruption charges, and his lawyers have just put in a statement to the courts. Benjamin cannot appear, will not appear before March 2025 because he's busy. He's running the war, don't you know? So rather than facing corruption charges, he's got to win. He's got to win against Hamas. So no, we're not appearing in front of your damn court. The second reason I think I've just explained at the beginning of the political report, and that's called Donald Trump. And what he's calculating on, in my view, is a Donald Trump victory in November, Donald Trump becoming president in January. And note the debate. I haven't given a detailed account. I would urge comrades, though, to watch it. You know, it's 1.5 hours of your life, I admit, but it is worthwhile watching. And one of the things that Donald Trump was saying there when Biden was boasting about the support that he'd given Israel, he said, I wouldn't have stopped Israel. What's he mean by that? I wouldn't have stopped Israel. He wasn't talking about 2,000-pound bombs. In my view, what he was talking about is finishing the job, which doesn't just mean eliminating Hamas militarily. It means solving the West Bank, and it means solving Gaza by getting rid of the Palestinians. And if that means tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people dying, I think Donald Trump will be perfectly happy with that. What happens then in the wider region, that's a different question. But I think Donald Trump would be happy with such an outcome. Biden at the moment is more hesitant about that. Either way, I'll just finish with this, that what Israel is forced to do is to get rid of the native population, or enough of the native population to make their project viable. And of course, what has just been announced in the middle of this Gaza horror is the building of, I had to look into what's this all about, the building of 5 more Israeli outposts on the West Bank. Outposts? So I initially took it as, well, Israeli army outposts? Well, they wouldn't bother reporting that, surely, in any newspaper or on any TV or radio. Now, of course, what it meant, as I quickly realized after going, what? Is they aren't talking about what I would call an outpost. What they're talking about is Israeli settlements. So 5 more Israeli settlements on the West Bank. And this was in return. This was something Netanyahu agreed to with his right in the cabinet. In return, this is Netanyahu, for, what's the word, lifting the freeze on funds that go to the Palestinian Authority. So the Palestinian authorities protested about these 5 new outposts. And it says that, quote unquote, that this sabotages the 2-state solution. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Just look at a map. That will tell you a 2-state solution. The map tells you everything. Here are Israeli settlements. Here are Israeli roads. Here are the Israeli military. And what you have is an Arab stan, a Bantustan, a reservation for the Arab Palestinian population. That's what the West Bank has been reduced to. And of course, what we have in legislation in Israel is the provision to extend the actual annexations on the West Bank. And of course, what we have in terms of Donald Trump, is someone who seems to be would be a president that would actually welcome such a move. So they're the two reasons. But as I said, there is a third, and I've already dealt with that, and that's the project of a greater Israel. And the differences in Israel are just about timing. All of the Zionist parties are committed to a greater Israel, which basically means all of mandate Palestine. But also, we have to recognize that that also goes hand in hand, because you've got to defend it with a plus. So to defend mandate Israel against external enemies, you have to go to war with Lebanon, i.e. against Hezbollah. You have to then look at a potential overthrow of the Hashemite dynasty in Jordan and go to war with what replaces it. You'd have to extend the border into the Sinai, wouldn't you, if there was a mass Palestinian population in the Sinai, if the Egyptian army doesn't do the job the Israeli army must. And we have the right wing in Israel, and we're talking about in the government, saying that what they're looking for is 1 million more settlers, million more, not a million more settlers on the West Bank. Where the hell they're going to get 1 million more people from, I don't know. But that is the stated aim. So they're my three reasons of why Netanyahu wants to keep the war going. They ain't just personal. They're part of the Zionist project itself. Okay, just a couple more minutes. Just to note, shoot the messenger, the US House of Representatives has just voted, let me get my figures right, 269 to 144. That therefore includes 62 Democrats. This is all about the appropriations for the US State Department, and to agree this appropriations from the public purse, the House of Representatives is saying the State Department must not use figures of deaths in Gaza that come from the health authorities there. That's Hamas health authorities. Well, as far as I know, other than the Israelis and the US right and people like that, most people basically say that the 38,000 figure is a conservative estimate. Why? Because no one's counted the bodies under the rubble. And I'll finish with this one on that particular subject, that of course what we also have in terms of international politics is the International Court of Justice saying there's, quote unquote, a plausible case against Israel for carrying out a genocide. And that's exactly what Rashida Tlaib of the so-called Squad has accused the Democrats of complicity with, because of course it's US bombs, US planes, US missiles that are being supplied throughout this war. And those that enable a genocide are also guilty in their own way. The US hasn't stopped arms supplies, and nor has Britain for that matter. But we all know that America could stop arms supplies. And when it comes to high-tech equipment, that would matter. You wouldn't be able to run F-35 fighters, I would guess, in terms of spare parts, more than a few weeks if they weren't coming over the Atlantic on transport planes. And you wouldn't be able to run the war, certainly when it now comes to the Lebanon, and it was the case with Gaza, if it wasn't for the regular supply of artillery and other such munitions.